Hello everyone, and of course I forgot to not listen to myself. So today I'm starting a new series because I want to create a small game. In every session I want to create a small game, even if it takes me 10 episodes, it doesn't matter. But I think it's important for me to understand how to code a game from scratch using various techniques. So last time I wrote snake. I'm gonna show you in a second. So I wrote snake just by using some basic techniques. Let's see. I don't want to commit it. Git history. Working snake. Blah blah blah. Working. Is this the one? Might be the one. Because I want to show you where it all started. Game. Okay, it's in DOM. And this one it's in DOM as well. So I did 2 implementations. And first one just randomly, from what I remember, it randomly generates a map. Blue is the snake, green are the fruits. So I think I have game. Yeah, I have this API that I created. So I didn't actually I haven't created a game loop. I was just interested in a turn-based solution, so I can see how how you code snake from scratch and what are the basics of the game, of the gameplay. So direction, let's see, if I move left, you see, and you move like this up, and then you eat the fruit, and then you go and you grow. If you hit something, game lost, your score is 1. Okay. The reason I haven't done a game loop to this, and by game loop I mean I haven't put this into a request animation frame. Request animation frame. Whoa. Request animation frame. Is because I didn't care about rendering. Let's look at the code. So the way I structured it, I tried to abstract the code, to make the code as abstract as possible. And I declared a class. So this is the basic implementation, not the ECS one. Created a class game, which let me remember. Game is more like the API of the game. like you have to implement a certain methods. Is more like is the abstract class, because this is classic OOP programming that I was trying to achieve here, even if it's with JavaScript or TypeScript. So in the abstract class, I implemented a couple of methods: on init, on start, after move, after generate fruit, on lose, the start, classic, the move, what happens when you move, the generate fruit method, and the reset. So this is your basic template of the game. There you have a board matrix where zeros are the free spots, the free cells, ones are the one occupied. And the game implementation itself, you extend the game and you create your own implementation, like how you want it to be rendered, what you want to do on start. It's a way of doing it. There are many ways of doing this. I decoupled the rendering in a class, although I would say that most of the methods here are maybe static. They don't really have, some of them have usages for inner, for class properties, inner class properties, but most of them are, could be considered static. The snake itself is a class with head and body. It moves in 4 directions. When you update the direction, it checks for tiles. This is a collision. Then checks for fruit. We have everything here, like the code is jam-packed here. And when you move the snake's body, we unshift, we pop. So first of all, we remove the last element and put it in front instead of the fruit. This is the basic logic for a snake game. You take the last element, you pop it, you remove it, and you put it in front. You always recycle. So basically, let's see in Paint that. Okay, so you have, say, okay, I don't know how to work with Paint, I just realized that. Rotate, select. Okay. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna try something else. Actually, a grid would be nice here, like Excel. Let's see, drive. Because I want to visualize this. Not Google Docs. Sheets. Oh my god, this is hard to visualize now. I'm gonna do it in Fireworks. Jesus Christ. Okay, can you stop posting messages, whoever is doing this? I need to go on my website and I need to report. Okay. So you have a map of 60 by, let's say, 600 by 600, okay. And you have a grid of 60 by 60. Okay. So when the snake is here, okay, and you have to move in this direction, okay, but if this is occupied by a fruit, let's say this is the fruit, what we do is we take the previous tile. Actually, no. Start all over. Start all over, because this is important. So we are with the snake. Let's say that the snake occupies these tiles, right? The snake moves in this direction, so then you will have another tile occupied here, but then you have to remove this one. In order to recycle objects, because this tile here can be moved here, can be copied here. So we do a pop, and then we do an unshift. From here to here. That's the basics of snake. Shift. So basically unshift moves the values, move the value to the beginning of the array. Okay, that's the basic of movement. And of course, when you move it, you free this tile on the grid, you marked it as 0, and then you mark this one as 1. So this one is 0, and this one becomes 1. The rest are 1 as well, or maybe 2, maybe depends on how you number your entities on the grid. We might want to number this as 2, put a number 2, and the hard surfaces that kills you, like the boundaries, might be 1. Okay, so let's see what other things I did here. I created a snake tile. I attached the snake tile to the actual snake. I gotta remember why I have the head. Ah, okay, the head is a special tile that also has a direction on it. So we store the direction on the head tile, because when you move the snake left to right, only the head moves, the rest follows. Okay, we talked about the scene. Scene is actually my rendering. Utility methods, just simple stuff like creating the default board if the tile is occupied. Normally this should have been in the grid engine, possibly somewhere in the games API, maybe, but I kept them separately. Okay, so this is Snake in a nutshell, if you want. So let's try to play it from the API. Go left, left, now up. Every time you eat something, you take the score. We want to move this everything into the other implementation where we're using ECS. But here are some things that we have to keep in mind. So ECS is entity component system, ECS. Okay, not to be mistaken with Amazon ECS. ECS it's not a framework actually, so it's entity component system. It's a way of writing your entities, so all your entities, the snake, the fruits, the score, the board, everything is stored as plain objects, like data containers. So ECS, as it says here, it follows the principle of composition over inheritance. So we will no longer have an abstract class, an implementation over it where you can change things around. No. All this, and by the way, this is how the game is bootstrapped. So we take the game implementation, we feed it with a scene. This is the rendering, actually, how the rendering is done. And then we start the game. And this is just a mumbo jumbo where I can control the game. And also we have a game state. Where's the game state here? Yeah, this is an important bit on the previous implementation. So we had the state, board, result, and score, and this is very important because we want to save the later on the current state of the game, and we care about this. We care about the current state of the game, because we want to save and load, the save and load functionality feature, and they say that using ECS we will be able to save the entities because they will be stored as plain objects, right? Okay, so now back to the implementation that I have made so far. It's really interesting. So I try to, let's forget about DOM, now we go to ECS. So I abstracted, this is a component so far. The engine contains the components and the systems. So far it only has this create the world. The entity entity stores components, so an entity can have multiple components attached to it. A system is like a service, at least this is how I see it at the moment, and the most important method that needs to be implemented is update, which works on all the entities that satisfy a certain condition. Utils, I see I deleted this, let me delete it. World, the world so I put a create entity on the world because when you create an entity you create it in a specific world. I put the add system here as well because systems, entities, everything are related to a certain world. Then what's important in here is that I need to report someone. Then when you create a query, you add entities that satisfy that certain query. You will see this later. So far, as you've seen, it's just simple code, like gluing code so far. How do I... Okay. Great. So let's take it from the top. I have instantiated the engine. Okay. The engine allows me to create the world, and in this world I added 3 systems: the rendering system, the keyboard system, and the grid system. Never mind the FPS, this is just an experiment that I will present maybe last. It's not important right now. Then with the I'm starting to create the entities. So here I create the systems, here I instantiate the engine, because without the engine I cannot actually start the game. And I start to create the entities. I create the map. Again, entity is just an empty container. The snake tile, this is something that I'm working on right now. So I created a snake tile, a snake, because the snake is composed of one tile, one entity. This mumbo jumbo here is because I didn't found a solution yet to how to inject the map properties. So map is like a separate entity. How do I inject those properties into another entity properties? I have an idea there that I want to explore today. So it's snake, obstacle, fruit. The screen itself is an entity, so everything can be an entity. This was really hard for me to comprehend at first. And to each of these entities we add components. Like a snake tile has a position on grid, a body, is it renderable, velocity, we attach a keyboard to it, then the snake, the obstacle has a position on grid as well, body, render. It's I added the obstacle as a component. I'm not sure if this is correct, but it helps me when I create queries like this one. Like all the entities to render, I create a query and I filter them by whoever has this component renderable, which is very, very useful. Okay. Now, I link entities to services. So screen is because render system needs a set screen. The grid system needs a map. Or at least it will need a map to be determined. The grid systems need to init the entities. Yeah, because it needs to put them on the grid. Still not sure if this is the correct way of doing it. And then in the loop, this is what's interesting about applying this pattern, is that the loop is rather simple, but I noticed that it can be more computer intensive. Why it can be more computer intensive? Because we iterate through all the queries results, and these query results can have duplicate, like you can have an entity who has the keyboard and the grid and the rendering system. But we're not going to stress out with the optimization. We don't care about that. We care about patterns of working with the ECS. Okay, and one problem where I was at the moment, this is the snake. Okay, if you press up, down, it will go one tile at a time. There's no interaction at the moment. Let me get this out of the key. I don't need this, and what's the other one? Rendering system update. Okay, that can stay. Okay. So one problem here is that I have to pass map width in tiles, map height, and tile size for each of the position on grid component. That's because the position on grid needs to do some calculations here, right? So now the question would be, why isn't that calculation on the grid system? That's a very good question. What am I doing? It's actually a great question. So let's pretend these never existed here. Now we're going to copy these here. So you have this map grid properties, map grid properties, okay, within tiles, we'll see in a second. Okay, now we're gonna have some errors here and there because we just destroyed. Okay, position on grid, right. So the problem is that the services don't communicate between them. So I need this value let me see. So in keyboard control system, I need the map grid properties. And now the question is, do I pass the whole grid system? Or only the grid? You see what kind of... So the map has the grid. Because the map is an entity, it has the grid with its properties. I don't want to duplicate this. So how do I get the map entity here? This is like querying the entities for the map, which is a waste of resources because I only need map properties. So what I could do is pass only map properties to the keyboard system. So it's like map properties. Okay, map properties. It's like this, and then I have access to map properties. Okay, so I have these properties. System props. It thinks that I want to access the system properties, which is not true. Ah, I see. properties. It's actually grid. I wonder if I should I'm not sure if I should change the... Nah, it's okay, map properties. So I passed these to keyboard, and that's way simpler, but I wonder if there are other situations where I will need to do this. What are the project errors? Let's see, rendering system. Ah, I see. This was the original problem. In the rendering system, you have the entity. But in the rendering system, I need the grid system. Otherwise, I cannot compute these. So, in the rendering system, I need a grid system. I could have it as a dependency of the update method, which would break my inheritance. Or I could have it as a hard dependency of the constructor. So when you add a system, how about so the question here is, how do you interact between systems? ECS, how do systems interact? Ideally, they don't interact, not in any direct sense. The systems is an ECS, the systems in an ECS all have access to the central ECS database where they can fetch entities, components attached to them. They don't talk to each other directly, they talk to the database. That makes sense. But the database in this case will be the world. right? So you were saying that the world would this be a circular dependency? Because if the world adds the system and then it adds itself to it, yeah, they want me to interact by queries. Should I bother right now with this or not? It kind of bothers me that this is a major this is like a major problem. Performance problem. But I shouldn't worry about that. I shouldn't really. Because I could cache any of these queries. query find so there are two problems I'm trying to solve here. First is the injection of the world inside the systems. It looks like the systems need access to the world, so it looks like the systems should be called with something like this system, or maybe let's say this. Or I think this is more appropriate. World this. Okay, and now when we add a system, it's just like that, right? Okay. Protected. Okay. Protected. And then keyboard control system has the same thing. I'll just wing it for now. I just took that Google or Stack Overflow answer I took it like it was for real. This, and there you have actually I don't even need a constructor here. And the grid system, what? Do I really need to? All right. And then position on grid can be taken from this world Control system doesn't need map properties here. Because it will have it on this world. So let's see. So you have the world. And in the world there is an entity called an entity of that has a grid component. So how do I tell an entity? Check this out. The reason I added a map here is because I didn't want in the system to query for the map. So this is no longer needed. In theory, is no longer needed. So this is a game map. Let's call it like that. I wonder if entity can be of a certain type. That would greatly ease the way you query. Let me check how other ECS are doing. ECS entity type. An ECS follows the principle of composition of entity, meaning that every entity is defined not by a type, yeah, but by the components that are associated with it. The design of the how components relate to entity depend on entity. Okay. Okay. So we have to avoid this type thing, because everything can be everything at some point, right? My only problem with the world, the map itself, is that actually, you know what? This makes sense. Name the best snake map ever. This actually makes sense. And you rely on the queries, and you can cache the queries. Once you did a query, you can cache it. How you cache it, that's the... I think... each query can be assigned a unique ID or a hash based on the parameters. I think the parameters are actually the key here. JavaScript cache function based on parameters. Yeah, I need some sort of memorization. The memorization itself, it's not a hard concept. Problem is that I need a way to determine. So you memorize a function, cache, return args. Just taking one argument here, any cache. That's easy. Multiple arguments would be... Oh wait, load dash has a memorize. And we will have decorators. So memorize function resolver creates a function that memorizes the result of function if resolver is provided. It determines the cache key for storing the result based on the arguments provided to the memoize. By default, the first argument provided to the memoize function uses a map cache. Well, that's easy, but I need a resolver. Then I could build it myself. It's not helping this one. Well, I started optimization before finishing the game. Let's go back to the component here. So game map ts. Let's just copy here. Game map, and we have the properties of name, string, and author string, right? Game map. Great. Okay, map properties are actually grid properties. And grid properties should exist only here. Okay, so world is const world, no, const grid is no, first I have to get the game map and then the grid. Game map, right? First I get the game map. So it's this world, create query, all. All, any means so when you say in a filter I want all and I want any. Any could mean that whatever filters you applied, it must be either this, either that, but I don't want that. I want let's see what I want. Const F1, there's one, no, okay, filters one, component undefined. Let's go with the undefined. So const is satisfying filter 1 entity find. This basically says give me the really okay. We're getting close with this one. So is satisfying filter role says that the component find me the entity what is this saying? Actually, is satisfying filter 1 means something else. All game map. And I get the first result. So this is saying, give me is satisfying filter entity f all find value component not found. You know what, I will worry about this after I make it. Game map, get component grid, and you have grid properties and grid properties. So we have const world, no, const game map, and then I get the grid, but it's not the grid who has the method, right? Correct, it's not the grid, it's the game map. No, it's not the game map. Is it okay, this is the most confusing part. It's the grid system. Wow. Grid system. So wait, in So it's add system, get system, and it's just like in the component. No, it's like in the entity, where when you get a component, get system, when you get a system declaration, in this case we have a map. On entity we have an object, why do I have a map here? Let's see, what's the advantage of JS map? So wait, if I do a you get 3, so it overrides. It remembers the original insertion order. Okay. Great. Now it's gonna say the same value. Okay, I guess I could use a map in both systems. Let's see, map get system, and I want the system grid system. Hello. right. So okay, let's do the same thing here. So systems. Okay, so into a system you add it like this. Okay, and then you return it. Okay. problem is that this doesn't manifest in entity. It's the same way. So let's say add unknown here. And the grid system gets this. Here, render system set screen. That's because a render system is of type system and it shouldn't be. So Type system is not assignable to type T. System is assignable to the constraint of type T, but T could be instances of the universal type of constraint system. And system. I don't get it, since T extends system. Ah, I see. This has to return T and then this is done. Ooh, I see. Can I do this? No. No. Right. Okay, so then I get access to the grid system. Everything compiles. Okay, there's the only difference is Get system, right? Systems. Oh. So wait a second. So I need the instance constructor name to register, to properly register it. I messed up there. So now we have the grid system. Okay, we are now back to square one, with the only difference that is that we don't care about performance now. Okay, we don't care that we do some queries. But I gotta tell you something. For the first time, when doing some sort of game programming in JavaScript, I have a flat heap and CPU usage. Maybe I'm not rendering very much, but it's flat. It's not like there's nothing leaking. That tells me that also the I believe the processor, or not the processor, the V8 knows how to optimize the query part. So it's instant. Okay. It's very hard to block the impulse of actually trying to optimize before having a working solution. Very hard, because you're constantly thinking, oh my god, I'm doing the same query over and over again. Right, so now we need to get rid of add map. Grid system. So the grid system cannot do anything without information from the map. It has to pull the information from the map and then work it out. this is why I believe that the grid system this is very interesting. So I have actually found an issue here where I instantiated the systems prior to the entities. And I believe it should be inverse. Right? Because you create the entities. I think I need a much wider space here. So you create the entities, you instantiate the engine, the world. It's like a new world. You do the entities. You do the queries, which can be cached, and then you create the systems where I can actually load the map. I can load the map into the grid system. Oh wow. I can load the map, but is that correct? Is that a correct thing to do? So the render system should find its screen entity, right? Or maybe the screen's entities. And the grid system should find its default map. And it should init entities. I mean, of course you can have some sort of reinitialize, because every time you change the map you have a reinitialize everything. But still, if I look at this, all entities on grid is a query that I think it should be by convention, that either it has to be inside or outside. That is the question. because it's like we don't even need these. Because the keyboard system has access to the world. If it has access to the world, it has access to the queries. And if it has access to the queries, then it can do its own queries. But then me as a developer, I cannot inject my queries. You see the problem. You have I need a convention for the systems. Init entities, it's fine. Load, maybe load entities and load map. I think load map and load entities. No, a more correct approach would be load maps. And it should be like this. No. Load all maps. And then pick the default map. So basically the loaded map would be an entity and the map grid would be the loaded map grid. And this is private. This makes sense, okay? This makes sense. So when you load the maps, you go and this maps entities, I mean game maps, right? Grid system. Load maps, all maps. And also load entities. So all map entities. Or let's just rename it like all entities that are maps, just to make it easier for us. And the render system needs to do render system set screen. So you load. Load current map. Well, I'm not gonna. Okay, let's rename it to current map. Current map. Current map. although load screen can have a different connotation, but whatever. I guess we can go with the same approach, load screens, because it may be multiple screens, and then load current screen. Okay. Now, for our next episode, we need to make the snake, and this is like architectural problem that we have. We need to tie two entities together, or maybe I don't know, we have to make the snake move on the grid system. So basically, okay, when we update an entity, it's simple, it just goes from one tile to another. But if the snake grows, then it has to change the entity itself. And I think this is the big challenge. The grid system shouldn't care about the snake. So what I believe is that, let me write here, I believe that snake system must be created, and inside that we manipulate the inner workings of the snake component plus snake tiles. So what if the systems have to signal each other? Let me search that. ECS systems interactions. So I'm guessing it's events, right? It's like they communicate with observer pattern or something like that. Identity and component on update. So I'm guessing the snake no, so the keyboard changes the snake position and grid component. I believe when the snake moves, so the keyboard send system only update the keyboard, but actually what's happening here is that the keyboard affects the tile in the future. I believe this is not correct. The keyboard shouldn't do that. The keyboard should only send events like move, has moved, and then the subscribers, like who should be the subscriber on this? I think the snake system should be. Then the snake system takes this, does this, right? Does this part here, and get the and this moves to the snake system. The snake system takes the position, only the position. What's the next position? Like the vector, left, right, whatever. And then the snake system should be able to interact with the grid system. And this is the tricky part, like you have to move on the grid, you have to do the movement, and you have to query or the grid system. Can I do this? Is this okay? Am I interacting with this fruit? And so on. And I think this is the part that I want to fix next time. I want to explore how do systems interact with each other. This is the most important part. How do systems interact with each other? And if they interact with events, then is it a ping pong between the two? Like, is the snake system going to say, okay, go, I want to go left, then grid comes back and said you can go left or you can't go left, or you stumble upon, you can go left but you stumble upon a fruit, and then the snake system decides, okay, then I'm gonna move no, then the snake system decides, okay, I'm gonna grow because the movement already happened on the grid, because the grid system allowed you to do that. And when the grid system allows you, you have to either switch your tail, like in here, switch the tile if the snake is composed of multiple tiles, or maybe just grow. And then it's tricky because you don't know if snake controls the grid. I mean, who's the master? Because sometimes snake says, okay, I can move, then I need to do this. I need to occupy this tile. And if it's this kind of ping pong, then it will take quite a while. Like, okay, snake wants to move. Grid says, okay, you can move. When does it end, you know? This is what we have to explore next time. Okay.